Joe Musso in studio alongside Ryan Wilson. Ryan, this was more the Ravens we expected to show up week one. It took them a few weeks, but the rushing attack now in full lather. What did you make of the means by which they beat the Bills in this game? Because this was decisive from the jump.
So here's what the Ravens were absolutely fantastic at coming into this season, or coming into this game through 3 weeks. Rushing versus stacked boxes. Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, that makes sense. They're number one. And the Bills' defense was middle of the pack. And design runs. Lamar Jackson gets involved in there, too. Bills struggled against that. Again, the Ravens were number one. So we saw that early, and we saw it often. And what we didn't see was the fourth quarter implosion that has become a hallmark of this Raiders team in recent years. And not only did they show up in the second half, they extended the first half lead, which also has to make John Harbaugh, the head coach, feel good. But I think it wasn't complicated. We ran the ball, and our offensive line, which has struggled over the first 3 weeks, looked pretty good. Starting right tackle Roger Rosengarten, the rookie, played pretty well. And they had some new faces in there. But again, if you can't stop the run, and by the way, Derrick Henry's 30 and weighs 250 pounds and no one can catch him. I mean, he's not even human. But again, if this is what the future is going to look like for the rest of the season with the Ravens, you have to feel pretty good about where they are. Yeah. I know you had some concerns in terms of January football, but we got 3 months. So let's enjoy what we got here tonight.
Certainly that question will not be answered until we get past the holidays, but it's a gift to open on this night for Ravens fans, as they certainly have an offense that has a clear identity, and that is beginning in the run. Now, it was an identity they tried to forge in those early weeks, week 1, week 2, trying to get Derrick Henry going, and it wasn't the success that we've seen over these last 2 weeks. Back-to-back 150-plus yard performances on the ground by Henry. Where are you seeing schematically the change? I mean, there was a lot of gun run early on in that week 1 where they were trying to figure out how to use him. How are they using Derrick Henry differently?
I think the biggest concern was probably figuring out the offensive line and how to get everyone on the same page when you're battling the injuries. The right side of the offensive line had been inconsistent, and I mentioned Roger Rosengarten getting that start tonight, and the offensive line looked like a cohesive unit, like they've been playing together for 10 years. And I think that simplifies a lot of things, because we know Derrick Henry, in terms of breaking tackles and making defenders pay at the point of attack, is one of the best in the league, even at age 30. But if he doesn't get a chance to get his legs going, Joe, that's where he struggles to get yards. And if he gets a head start, ahead of steam, that's a wrap. We saw the safety have to leave with a concussion, I think, midway early in that game. And that's because he tried to take on the two knees of Derrick Henry without much success. And he is certainly not alone in struggling with that. So I think what we saw tonight, if we had seen this in that playoff game last January against the Chiefs, maybe it plays out a little differently, but we know that Todd Monken went away from the run. They threw the ball a ton. We saw Lamar with only 18 attempts, 13 completions, the 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Did have the 1 fumble in the second half that perhaps had Ravens fans a little worried, but they finished strong, won by 25 points.
This is the 4th most rushing yards through 4 games with a player on a new team in NFL history. 480 rushing yards for Derrick Henry in these first 4 games. And that comes with, I believe it was a 48-yard performance in week 1. He has found his footing, and they have found what this offense runs through, and it is so clearly Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. On the flip side of this, some big statements were made into microphones across the sporting world over the last week about these Buffalo Bills, this current version maybe being the best team in the NFL. How does this 60 minutes change the way you regard them right now?
It's a bad 60 minutes of football in late September. And I think you go home, you fly back up to Western New York, and you watch the tape and you learn from it. We talked about the run game being what the Ravens did well. Passing the football is what this Bills team has done well over the first 3 weeks. Among the top in the league at virtually every category. It starts obviously with Josh Allen, but he was under pressure most of the night. I thought the Ravens defenders, the front 7 in particular, did a great job of containing Josh in the pocket and forcing him to make tough throws while also having to fend them off. I don't know if there's a better quarterback with a stiff arm than Josh Allen. He had to use it a lot on Sunday night. But they're also at the other end. Josh still hasn't thrown an interception. But Nate Wiggins, the rookie cornerback, should have had 2. He dropped 2 to hit him in the hands. So a bad night offensively. They weren't able to throw the ball, which is what they do well. The run game isn't necessarily what carries them, even though Joe Brady, the OC, provides balance there. But it just wasn't their night. It seemed that to be the case early on. And when you pull Josh Allen with 7 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, it makes it clear to me that we're going to forget about this and look forward to week 5.
We have seen Mitch Trubisky back-to-back weeks for vastly different reasons. Let's take a look at your quarterback comparison coming out of this one. And we are going to take a look at Josh Allen, not Mitch's numbers. Josh, 16-29, a $180. 0-0, did have a fumble, put it on the ground in this one. Lamar did what was asked. And sometimes what is asked is to hand it to the man next to you or get into that run game yourself. But 3 total touchdowns, no INTs. The passer rating through the roof with only 18 attempts. Our conversation continuing on the tail end of this game. We talk about slow starters sometimes in other places, Cincinnati being one of them. This is a Ravens team that preseason, the storylines were always there a few years ago with this Harbaugh-led group. But as they do find themselves, it seems to be in all the same places. Running the ball, stopping the run, really being true to that Raven identity. What is the next layer? What is the next step? What is going to be the difference come January to make sure that this group collects a different outcome than past ones?
7 days from now, the next step will be in Cincinnati facing an equally unimpressive Bengals team up through week 4. They both won today. That's a big deal. And we'll get a measure of both teams because that's what we need to find out of these two teams who we all thought coming into the season were going to be the best in the AFC North. Currently, to the Pittsburgh Steelers, that's going to be a tenuous hold on that position atop the AFC North. And I think what you have in Baltimore, who struggles at times when they face off against the Bengals, is can their defense get after Joe Burrow, making him uncomfortable? Joe Burrow has yet to throw an interception. And can the offensive line, against an undermanned front seven in Cincinnati, continue the dominance of providing Derrick Henry opportunities, Justice Hill opportunities, Lamar Jackson, of course, opportunities? Because if that's the case, and if that's the recipe for success, just lean on Derrick Henry till the wheels fall off and let Lamar throw it 20 times a game. I feel like you can win a lot of football that way.
Yeah, we'll see how it looks next week and in the weeks that follow. But on this week, dominant were those Baltimore Ravens. Back in studio, Joe Musso alongside Ryan Wilson. Ryan, this was a conversation around this Bills team that got to the point of, is this the best team in the NFL? But it started with, does Josh Allen have the talent around him he needs to succeed? I only offer the Coleman drop and the 81 yards rushing to rehash that question of, does Josh Allen have the talent he needs around him to succeed? Or did tonight sort of illuminate something more about these Bills?
I think it illuminated that the 87-yard rip from Derrick Henry to start the game pretty much set the tone. So that's on the defensive side of the ball. And look, there is no Stephon Diggs here, admittedly, but Khalil Shakir had led this team in receiving coming into this week. Dalton Kincaid, the tight end, had been a big part of the pass game, and they had been one of the most efficient pass offenses in the NFL. So no, there's no Stephon Diggs there. Yes, they traded out of the first round and passed on Xavier Worthy to get a Keon Coleman. And we need to see a little bit more from Keon Coleman, but it's early in the season. I think this is just one of those games where you showed up and it's just not your night. It didn't feel right from the moment you stepped off the bus. Derrick Henry confirmed it 199 times per yards, and now you have to regroup. They'll fly home, and it doesn't get any easier. They're at Houston, and then they're at the Jets, so they got to figure this out. But look, 4 hours ago, we said this is the best team in the NFL. Has that changed? We'll find out. They're still a really good football team who just had an off night in Baltimore.
We will see what it looks like moving forward as the Bills suffer this loss, bury the tape, move forward, as you said, some big-time matchups on the way.